Good evening, Belize, and welcome to XTV's news broadcast for Holy Thursday, April 17, 2025. Making the headlines tonight, U.S. passenger who hijacked Tropic Air flight killed, 3 people injured. Kampol reacts to agitation from police officers for salary increase. And tariff wars to affect global travel differently when compared to pandemic years. We take our first break and return with the news in detail. Welcome back with your news. I am Drea Espinosa. For 2 hours, 14 passengers on board a small Tropic Air Cessna Caravan DV3 HIG were held hostage by 49-year-old Akiniela Sawa Taylor, a U.S. national and military veteran who hijacked the plane. 2 passengers were American and the remainder, including a child, were Belizean. They had departed the municipal airstrip in Corozal at 8 a.m. en route to San Pedro. But not long after takeoff, Taylor pulled out a knife and hijacked the plane mid-flight. He inflicted injuries to 3 persons, including a pilot, Jair Francisco Castaneda, who attempted to disarm Taylor, a passenger, Fitzgerald Brown, and a manager at Tropic Air Howell Grange. Taylor was demanding to be flown out of the country, and at one point they made it all the way to Turniff before returning in the direction of Belize City. Taylor would later give directives about refueling. As their fuel supply dwindled, they finally landed after 10 a.m. at the Philip Golson International Airport, where one of the injured persons, who is a licensed firearm holder, fatally shot the St. Louis, Missouri resident. Police Commissioner Chester Williams was with a team at the traffic control tower at the International Airport and shared details upon the safe landing of the hijacked plane.
We also ensured that we deployed a team of police officers in different areas. So we had deployed at the International, the Belize City Municipal, Kikaka, San Pedro, Dangriga, and even the coastal road, because I know there's a airstrip at the White Ridge area on the coastal road. Again, we did this to ensure that had the plane land at any of these locations, that we would have been able to intercept the hijacker. At one point we thought he was going to land in Key Chapel, and so what we did was that we contacted Astrom helicopter, again because we were now thinking outside the box, knowing that the fuel was depleting. We were hoping that we don't have to move from a search and rescue operation to a search and recovery operation. So the thing with the helicopter was to follow the plane to see where it would land. So if they had decided to crash land the plane in the sea or on one of the islands, we would have been there quickly to respond and provide assistance to those passengers, provided that they would have survived. Upon landing, the team at the airport, I must say that we were supported by the BDF as well, and the employees of the PGIA, including Mr. Espat, were very, very cooperative with the police and the operations, making sure we were able to gain access to whatever we need to get access to, so that we can carry out this operation to its best. And so when the plane landed, we immediately made our way to the runway. I must say, as the plane landed, it ran out of fuel. So again, God is good. The passengers were quickly to alight the plane, and they were met by police and the airport employees. We also encountered the hijacker, and I must say that the hijacker was shot to the chest. 3 passengers on board the plane received varying degrees of injuries. They were stabbed with knife. The hijacker had a knife, and what we gathered from one of the passengers who was injured is that as the plane landed, he shot the hijacker. He had a licensed firearm.
The runway at the PGIA was cleared to ensure there were no interruptions for incoming and departing flights. Williams said he was communicating by text with a passenger on the plane. He shared the little information they have on Taylor. Our reports are that Taylor had a brief encounter with immigration officials on Sunday in Corozal.
From our research so far, it shows that the hijacker came into the country, attempted to enter the country over the weekend through the Belize northern border, and he was refused entry by immigration. So we're still wondering how he eventually came in. But again, we all know the porous nature of the border, so he might have came in illegally. And there was an issue, from what I'm told, at the free zone last night involving the same hijacker. So he seems to be a problematic person, and so that is what we know about him, in addition to the fact that he's a U.S. veteran. The pilot for that plane, I must say that he he did an exceptional job. Even in terms of his communication with the tower as this was unfolding, he remained calm and he was extremely focused in terms of what he was going to do. Had he panicked, it could have a different outcome. So again, the pilot was very instrumental for the outcome that we have, and so we must ensure that we give him the credit that he deserves as well.
So the wisdom in the decision of not shooting the hijacker during the flight?
Well, again, that was something important, to not have fired shots while the plane was still up in the sky. You never know what could happen. So again, the person who fired the shot, again, was very thoughtful in terms of how he executed that. He did it at the right time.
The 3 injured persons were rushed to the hospital in Belize City and were in stable condition. Going forward, authorities must once again assess safety and security at municipal airstrips.
I'm sure this is going to be something that is going to be discussed intensely at the next National Security Council meeting. I know we have commenced dialogue in terms of looking at our local flight security. The time has come for us to look at it more in-depthly and see what adjustments can be made. I'm sure that there is going to be input from the airport authority in this respect. So it's a matter more for the National Security Council to determine what is going to be done moving forward where security on these planes are concerned.
So how lax is security at the Corozal airstrip?
I cannot say how lax it is. At this time, I cannot.
Go on with a knife.
I can't say because I don't think that we have that system yet where we do rigid search. It is only at the PGIA where you have to pass through a scanner to board a flight. At these airstrips, they don't have that kind of security. So maybe the time has come that we look in that direction to ensure that we have security measures at every airstrip once it is used for commercial purpose.
We know that when there was the aircraft was stolen in the south, maybe a year or 2 ago, there was discussions in terms of security at these airports. Are you able to say whether or not any steps had been taken since that incident in terms of security?
That is something that's going to be taken on by the Belize Airport Authority or Civil Aviation. What we have done at the different airstrips is to increase police patrols at those areas. At least hourly, the police would go and make checks at the airstrips and make sure everything is okay. But in terms of posting police officers at the airstrips, we have not gotten there yet. But we have encouraged the airlines to hire local securities to man their assets at the different airstrips.
Investigators completed processing the scene at the PGIA after 4 this afternoon. We are reliably informed that with immediate effect, a police officer will now be stationed at municipal airstrips to serve as a deterrent, but also to conduct searches based on reasonable suspicion. In a statement this afternoon, Tropic Air discussed the unprecedented in-flight emergency. They stated, quote, "In the face of incomprehensible pressure, our pilot acted with extraordinary courage and calm, guiding the aircraft to a safe landing. His actions were nothing short of heroic," end quote. The company also noted that it is offering the injured passengers all available support. The release adds, quote, "Safety is and remains our top priority. Our pilots undergo rigorous training to respond effectively and efficiently to any situation. And today we pause to recognize the bravery, skill, and leadership that brought our aircraft home safely," end quote. Tropic also thanks all the officials who had a hand in dealing with the frightening situation, including the Office of the Prime Minister, whose CEO, Narda Garcia, was part of the team strategizing how to address the situation. The U.S. Embassy was also strategically involved in the response, as shared by Public Affairs Officer Luke Martin.
we're very sad something like this happens, particularly on this Thursday. Everybody's casual, everyone's getting ready for a long weekend with family, etc. I mean, from our perspective, it really highlights the importance of security, safety. I mean, by keeping Belize safe, we want a region that's safe, Belize that's safe, something that the administration in the United States looks at right now. So we're glad that, people were able to work together on this and that there were no, that everything was resolved. We're really just committed to making sure that, through investment, through partnerships, we have great relationships with the Belize Police Department, law enforcement here, and in a situation like this, how we can quickly get information both ways. They reached out to us and we reached out to them as well. So, we were glad that we have such strong partnerships with the Belize authorities here as well.
Media from Missouri have reported that while Taylor was born in California, he resided in St. Louis, where he previously worked at the Hazelwood School District. He graduated with honors from Lindenwood University in Missouri in 2014. One commenter under a news article on Facebook stated he was a well-loved teacher. As we reported on Wednesday, in the wake of the news which broke earlier this week that CEOs in the public service will be getting a 15% increase in salaries, police officers began agitating for a salary increase as well. Today we asked the outgoing commissioner, Chester Williams, for his view on their request.
I'm not going to say no, that the government workers don't deserve an increase. I do believe that majority of government workers deserve an increase. But when we speak of increase, we have to look at what the government can afford. What people don't understand is that as public officers, we get increase every year. You may not want to say it, but every year public officers get an increase. That increase comes by way of an annual increment, which is equivalent to 3% of your salary, right? While from what I see, CEOs don't get an annual increase. They get one flat salary, and that salary they get up until when they start become CEO. So if you were to calculate what CEOs were making 4 or 5 years ago, and you compare what a public officer would have been making 4 or 5 years ago, you would see that the public officer had made significant progress in salary, while the CEOs did not. So I'm not saying that to justify anything. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, inflation affects everybody. It does not only affect the ordinary public officers, but it also affects the CEOs. So I guess that's the spirit in which the increase was looked at. And if you were to take the old salaries of the CEOs and you add 3% to that every year, from 6 years ago to now, it would still be more than $88,000.
The terms that were being worked out was to match what you're making when you go over as CEO?
Yes, my salary as Commissioner of Police is more than what the CEOs are making, and that is one of the issues that we are having. I cannot be allowed to get a reduction in salary. Getting a reduction in salary is like getting a demotion, right? So that is one of the issues that we are dealing with at this time to see how we're going to work with the salary issues.
The effects of the global tariff wars brought on by U.S. President Donald Trump are expected to impact the aviation and tourism industries globally. However, those effects may not be seen right away. President of the Belize Hotel Association, Reynaldo Malik, explained that it is now affecting the industry in different ways.
We have to be careful that we don't use that as a blanket term, right? Because when we talk about the tariffs having an effect on Belize or specifically on the hotel industry, it means that it's going to affect our costs, our ability to acquire certain items like linen and some of the other things that we purchase. Even if you purchase it locally, but it's imported from the US, then it is going to affect our costs and our ability to deliver a quality product, right? So we're going to have to increase our asking price to offset or defer those costs as far as our input, if you want to look at it that way. Additionally, however, if you look at the economic uncertainty in our biggest market, that's what needs to be underscored. The biggest market for overnight tourism in Belize is the United States. And sure, yes, it's followed by Canada, but that gap is tremendous, right? We saw that in 2020 when we had to unexpectedly shutter our country. Um, and so what you have, that economic uncertainty in the US, you don't necessarily see it with cancellations because what you have are pre-booked stays, meaning folks that have booked these stays in Belize last year purchased their plane tickets some months ago. So you're not necessarily going to see the stay canceled. The first part of the effect that I believe we're going to see is the sort of disposable income being spent while in the country. I think that the first effect that we're going to see is less spending for tours.
Malik explained that the effects may start to be felt in 2026, as often visitors book ahead as far as 2 years in advance. He said the bookings for 2026 are already trending lower than would have been anticipated otherwise.
If the economic uncertainty continues, and I say if, because if you're following it, it's a ebb and flow on a daily basis, right? One day the markets are up, one day the markets are down, and that's the kind of uncertainty that people are starting to protect the monies that they have saved up. So right now, for instance, the last time I sat with the in-country rep from Expedia, the numbers for next January, next February are not pacing at the same, they're not going at the same pace as we would normally expect the early reservations to come in, right? So the effect is not going to be instantly noticeable. It will affect, I believe, tour operators a lot quicker than it will actually affect the hotel, just simply because we have prepaid bookings and those are going to be honored. You know, the guest is not going to tell you I'm not going to come, because we all have some very, very I would say robust cancellation policies. So depending on when you're trying to cancel the stay, you're probably not going to get back anything, or you're going to get back only a portion. So that's not going to be an option, I think, for a lot of travelers. They've already invested in the travel, at least for 2025. And but the pain will be felt for 2026.
It's unfortunate that as Belize's tourism industry celebrates a record high in tourist arrivals, another global issue, the tariff war initiated by U.S. President Donald Trump, is threatening that success. It's very eerily similar to what occurred in 2019 and 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic following a similar record high. However, according to Belize Hotel Association President Reynaldo Malik, the situation is very different when compared to the pandemic years. He said that other countries are also assessing the situation, wondering how this will play out. Malik shared more on what may need to be done should the tariff wars continue.
It's not only on Belize, right? I mean, we communicate, as in my role at the Hotel Association, I communicate with my peers. In fact, I was on a board call. I sit on the board at the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. I was on a board call a couple of days ago, and this is the concern throughout the Caribbean, right? What are we going to do if we lose that market, if that market slows down? And everybody's seen it already. They're starting to see the slowdown in their respective destinations. So I mean, it is going to take an effort, a collaborative effort between the private and public sectors to get over this. This isn't like COVID, right? Yes, COVID was unexpected, but we also knew that it would take one thing to start the recovery, which was open the airport. This is not going to be so easy. There's not going to be a silver bullet in this particular case. This is going to take we're going to have to dig deep and be very collaborative. I saw that the Canadians and the Mexicans have partnered up, and they're doing a special trying to move their Canadian, the business that would have been US bound over to Mexico. But they're big countries. Those are huge countries, and they can withstand any sort of battle with the US. We wouldn't be in that same situation, right?
After the break, Kumho speaks on significance of applications from Elmer Na in Ramnare's case. Stay with us.
donde estás mejor vivo que muerto. Farmacia Freetown, teléfono 22 32 87 6.
Earlier this week, there were consequential developments in the Belmopan-Ramnarees triple murder case against former police officer Elmer Nah. Today, we asked Commissioner of Police Chester Williams about several applications made by the defense, including one regarding video evidence being used based on their claim that an original video from an SD card has disappeared.
I am not sure if there was a SD card. I really don't know. I know that the recording was done on cell phones. And the police have received the recordings from a cell phone belonging to one of the persons who occupied the house. So I really and truly cannot speak for SD card, whether or not there was one.
Applications have now been made officially, formally before the court for the video to be enhanced, the surveillance video. Can you speak to that?
We have already submitted the video footage for enhancement through the FBI. That has been done. The FBI did the best they could with it, and that has been disclosed to the defense. If the defense feel like the FBI did not do a good job at enhancing it, then let them do it. We have done our part. At the end of the day, we don't have the capabilities in-house, and so we outsourced to the FBI, and they did what they could have with it. And I don't think the court is going to order the state to do something that the state cannot do. The court does not make an order in vain. So they have a right to make the request. We'll just wait and see what the order of the court is going to be in respect of that.
He's also applied for 2 officers to be subpoenaed, including an ACP, Mr. Greenidge, to testify on behalf of the defense. What's the likelihood of that actually being granted?
Well, I don't have an issue for it to be granted. There is nothing that Mr. Greenidge and the other officer can do or say that is going to exculpate now from the accusation. Neither of them were with him at that particular moment when the murder was committed. So I don't see what they can say in his defense in this particular instance. So.
Commissioner of Police Chester Williams today defended the practice of departing senior officers in the Belize Police Department, getting a lavish send-off with a party and gifts paid for from the public purse. He says the gifts will serve as a token of appreciation for their work. At the same time, Williams noted that he has significantly scaled down the event that would have been held in appreciation for him.
Me personally, I am not a fan of gifts. I was raised with a mother who couldn't afford to buy me a birthday gift, a Christmas gift, or any kind of gift. So I was raised that way. And so gifts do not move me. Even now, when people offer me a gift, I say I don't need no gifts. But at the end of the day, if it is that my colleagues in the department wants to have some event or some function to celebrate the time that they had spent with me and the time that I have given to this country over 33 years of service, and if they see the need to give me a gift as a token of their appreciation, then I certainly would welcome it. But this whole issue that was leaked to Channel 7, I don't understand why it is an issue. I am not the first, I'm not the second, I'm not the third. Every commissioner, every senior officer, and even every constable, when they retire, we always ensure that they have something for them and that they do get gifts as they depart. But some people are just so mischievous. They try to make an issue out of it for their own aggrandizement, and I hope that they get the satisfaction that they was hoping to get from it. But at the end of the day, for me, I do believe that whatever is given to me, I deserve it. I have worked my entire life for this country, and the thing is that I have even cut down on what had been done for my predecessors, because they were going to have a big party, and it's going to be a big party where a number of persons of the public would have been invited, would have had to rent a space, and it would have cost so much money. And I said to them, no, I don't want that. I rather have something with only the senior command that is going to cost far less than having this lavish party that had been done in the past. So when you compare what I am getting to what my predecessors have got, it is nothing.
We asked Williams if he will miss being commissioner, a role that comes with significant power that he will not have as a CEO.
It's not about power, it's about public service. My passion is serving the people. I would choose public service any day over anything else. And to move from commissioner to a CEO, I see that as a promotion, because you're moving from a head of department to a CEO. And certainly, yes, I'm not going to say I won't miss being a police. This is what I have done from I was 17 years old. So it's embedded in me. And certainly I'm going to miss being a police officer. When it comes to the power, that is secondary. Because at the end of the day, it's not about having power. It's about ensuring that whatever power you have, that you use it for the greater good of the society. And that's how I've always operated. I know sometimes people don't agree with what I do and how I do things, but I always ensure to think about the long term, what effect my decision is going to have on not just the individual against whom I do certain things, but the country in a whole. We always want to ensure that we send the right signal to the people, that they can develop that trust and confidence in the work that the police department do.
Yaya Marin Coleman, the chairperson of the UBAD Educational Foundation, today embarked on her third hours-long protest walk from Vista Del Mar to the office of the Ministry of Education on North Front Street in Belize City. The community activism is in favor of a natural hair policy to end discrimination in schools across the country and at the workplace.
You could wear natural hair as you were born. Locks, twists, cornrow, braids, any length. The way your hair, you wear your hair, don't have nothing to do with your skills, with what you bring to the table. What it is a form of racial discrimination, Black people especially, for said that you're not enough. You know, to measure up to European standard of beauty. And for the people there, we want to find all kind of justification. I'm not going to sit down right over there with phone and only European people could be racist. Everybody else have prejudice or biases. So within the Black family, you have colorism. So we don't have to engage in no conversation. I don't take back no chat. That one human rights violation, that one constitutional violation. And you hear from continue to that day 226 since we start this awareness campaign, usually calling WB. But this is what tickle me, Marcel. School won't open, I believe, in August 2025 for high school students, and I think in September for primary school students. I want to see what happens when school starts, because it won't be over an year since UBAD Educational Foundation to bring this concern consistently. Now, the former Minister of Education, when him being in the seat, he never supported, but right before election, he said he supported. But he's not the Minister of Education anymore. But it were put on record that the former Minister of Education, Francis Fonseca, agreed that Belize need a new national hair law. Remember now, in 2022, Anguilla became the first Caribbean island for change the hair policy. In 2023, Trinidad and Tobago became the second Caribbean island for change the hair policy, more inclusive of braids, locks, cornrow twists. And then in 2024, Puerto Rico became the first Caribbean country to change the law to say that students and employees have one right for not experience hair discrimination. Now, the hope is that in 2025, Belize will be the first mainland Caribbean country for change their hair policy, for stop hair discrimination, and for stop violate Belizean students' right for say, you can't come to school, you're denied an education because you don't follow their colonial rules.
Marin Coleman says she intends to send another letter to the relevant authorities before her next walk scheduled for May, given that there have been changes in leadership of the relevant ministries since the March 12th general elections. Additionally, Marin Coleman notified that once the new Commissioner of Police formally assumes the post, she will apply for a protest permit, as none has been granted to her to protest in front of the office of the Ministry of Education despite multiple requests. Returning to tourism news, the first group of travelers expected to be affected by the global tariff wars and a subsequent increase in traveling costs are the budget travelers and those who would need to save to go on a holiday. It's also no secret that it is not cheap to visit Belize, so it is expected the country would attract fewer of that category of travelers. Belize Hotel Association President Reynaldo Malik spoke more on this.
We're not a very cheap destination, market versus market, ourselves versus Cancun, ourselves versus other destinations in the Caribbean. We're not by far, we're not the cheapest destination to come to, and that's for a number of reasons, right? In the other destinations that I mentioned, they have very large properties boasting 400, 600, 800 rooms, so they can afford, they make their money off of volume. So they can have lower rates. And then they also have lower airfares to those countries as well. Belize, our airfare on average in the high season is bordering around, I would say, anywhere from 600 to 800 US round trip. So, the more affluent travelers, I think, we're not going to see a slowdown there. But the folks that need to plan ahead, those are the ones that are going to be more conservative with their spending, and that's going to affect their travel.
We recently reported on the move certain tourism stakeholders have made to lure more Canadian visitors into the country. U.S. President Donald Trump has angered many Canadians recently due to his statements on the country's sovereignty and imposing import tariffs on Canada. Many Canadians have started boycotting travel to the U.S. However, according to Belize Hotel Association President Reynaldo Malik, getting more Canadian tourists to Belize may not be so simple. Malik explained that the issue is that direct flights between Canada and Belize are seasonal, and we might lose travelers who would fly via the U.S. during off-season months.
Airlines set out their routes at least a year and a half to 2 years in advance. So what you have are commitments that airlines have already made, investments that they've already made to fly to a certain route. Now, when we, for instance, talk about our Canadian market is seasonal. The direct flights from Canada are only on, I believe, from late December. And I think the longest one is probably going to be WestJet, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to turn off, for lack of a better term, in May or June. I could be wrong with that one, but it's seasonal, right? They don't fly to Belize all year round, at least not the direct flight. So in fact, what's going to happen now, and this is where the immigration turmoil in the US will affect us. Canadians that would normally have traveled to Belize outside of that direct flight window would have transited through the US. And they're very reluctant to do that now, right? So that's going to affect our Canadian travel outside of the direct flight window. So you're talking anywhere in late June, July, August, September. We're not going to see any Canadians that would normally have to transit through the US to get to Belize. So that's going to affect that.
Malik did explain that there are efforts to lure Air Canada and WestJet to offer year-round service or to get other Canadian airlines to fly into Belize. He says that they are also exploring flights to Jamaica.
The number one reason that they had said to us that they couldn't extend our season, and this is going back some months, was that they didn't have the equipment nor the personnel to sustain flights into the summer to Belize. It seems though that they are getting a lot of cancellations into the US, and perhaps, just perhaps, that's going to free up equipment and staff for them to maybe continue flights to Belize. And there are conversations going on with other Canadian carriers that don't currently service Belize at all to add Belize to their roster. And then we're having conversations out of Mexico as well to try and integrate with a European carrier to try and get more Europeans here to Belize as well through that route. But one thing that I can tell you is that we've noticed that one airline that has upped the frequency and the amount of seats flying into Belize is TAG out of Guatemala City. And that's a route that's very popular with the Europeans wanting to get into Belize anyway. So I believe that signifies that the European interest in Belize is increasing despite the challenges of getting here via. We don't have a direct flight into the country as yet. And then there are other efforts. We're trying to connect through Jamaica as well. Like, Europeans, there are direct flights into Montego Bay, for instance. So we're trying to maybe get something that tags off of that as well. But it's a work in progress, and it's not, unfortunately, there's no magic wand that we can wave and make this happen.
After the break, a granddaughter of Corazal sunken boat survivor shares the untold story. Stay tuned.
20 years ago, we built a company
Real-time status updates.
Drea Scott is a university professor in the UK. She was born in Jamaica to a Belizean mother and later moved to the UK. Scott published a book detailing what is historically deemed as Belize's worst transport accident, a tragic boat incident in 1923 off the coast of Sarteneja, Corozal. A mailboat named EML had sunk, and with it took the lives of 18. Some 45 survived, including her grandmother, Alice Peebles Marchand. Unfortunately, her grandmother's baby was among those who perished. Scott explained that she had heard what she thought was a tale when she was young, when her grandmother would tell them bits and pieces of what happened. During the pandemic, she recalled the story and did a little research.
It's a story that I heard as the headline of when I was a child. My grandmother, who I mentioned lived with us, would say, you know, when I was young, I was in a shipwreck with 5 of my children and I lost the baby and I saved somebody else's child. And you know how it is as children, you say, oh yes, that's really interesting, Granny. And the end of story. She never ever gave us any details other than that. And we didn't ask, we weren't astute enough to ask any questions. During the lockdown, when I was working from home most of the time, I decided to do a search on my grandmother. And up popped this newspaper article from 1923 about the shipwreck. And I thought, my goodness, it was a shipwreck. And the article actually made me cry because it was such a tragedy. And so I spent some time trying to find out more about it. I got in touch with somebody put me in touch with a Belizean historical Facebook site. And so I asked a few questions about it and nobody knew anything about it. Some older people said, oh yes, we remember learning that there was a shipwreck and Bishop Hopkins died in it, but they didn't know anything. And 3 nuns, a bishop and 3 nuns.
Scott spoke of the intense research she had to do to find information on the tragedy and even received help from Belmopan by way of Mary Alpuche of the Belize National Archives. She also discovered first-person testimony about the experience on the boat given by her grandmother at the inquest that later took place in Corozal town. She learned that the people of Corozal pooled $120 to help the victims, which was a lot of money at that time.
I'm a researcher by training, you know, I'm a professor of research. And so I did what I'm trained to do, and I thought I'm going to do some research on this. And I went to various sites. The main place was because I live in Britain, I went to the National Archives in Kew, which is an amazing place. And I found an awful lot of information about the shipwreck. So what happens is it seems that at that time, in 1923, everything that happened in Belize, which was then British Honduras, was recorded, and every decision that was made by the governor, everything happened through letters from the governor of British Honduras to the Secretary of State in Britain. I did all this research, and what I found was a story of just the most incredible incompetence, corruption, greed. Yeah, incompetence, corruption, greed, and a huge cover-up at the governmental level. That as a result, this story was completely buried. In this story, the people of Corozal play an enormously important part because the ship went down in the Bay of Corozal. And these fishermen from Consejo and Corozal went out in their little dories and started collecting bodies. Within hours of the the alarm being raised when this lifeboat with the 4 people, including one child, a baby, which was one of my grandmother's children, landed in Corozal.
Scott decided to publish a book entitled The Tragedy of the AML, A Forgotten Story, so that the story can finally be told to a greater audience. Along the way, Scott met the daughter of the child her grandmother had saved, as well as connected with relatives she didn't know about who live in Orange Walk Town. She also wants to build a memorial in Corozal.
The idea of the book is to raise money for a memorial. So I had circulated this information to the historical site, and people were incredibly interested in it and said lovely things about the story. Well, I mean, lovely things about having got it together, but it is a story that makes you weep in places. It is just so incredible. And yes, so the idea was everybody knows about the bishop, but nobody knows about these other people. So, for example, I'll just give you some highlights. There was a lifeboat, one lifeboat, and in the lifeboat were not the women and children. All the people who died, except for the bishop, were women and children. In the lifeboat were crew members, etc. Cowardice is one of the adjectives that I didn't include before, but there was a lot of that. And there was one family that called the Wood family. There were 14 of them on board, 3 sisters and their 11 children. And of that entire, 1 sister and 1 child survived. So that almost the entire family was wiped out. Yesterday received news from a company that has a branch in Belize, which is it's a BPO, a call center company called ITEL. And the CEO got in touch with me, and he is donating a copy of the book to the library of every high school and community college in Belize. And it turns out that his wife is a descendant of one of the survivors of.
The book can be purchased on Amazon in paperback and Kindle versions. If you would like to help Drea Scott in her quest to build a memorial in Corozal, she can be contacted via email at doniascott@gmail.com. Tourism stakeholders have for a while been exploring markets outside the U.S., while it seems that any changes now would be as a direct result of the tariff wars. Reynaldo Malik, the Belize Hotel Association president, says that a lot of these moves were years in the making. He said stakeholders long realized that the industry was too dependent on the U.S. market. Another market that Belize is trying to tap into is South America, which has also been years in the works.
And then, South America is also showing a preference for us right now as well. So having conversations with COPA to try to facilitate better connections through Panama, coming out of, I think, Peru as well, which is one of their hubs down in South America as well. So they have shown up. They're leaning towards Belize as well. We're becoming front of mind with them now. So we are trying. We have been working on alternative markets to bolster our overall tourism numbers. But if we lose any traction on the U.S. market, that is going to have a negative effect on our tourism numbers.
Thanks to the Minister of Tourism and Sports, Honorable Anthony Mahler, the San Ignacio and Santa Elena Basketball Association was able to procure a wooden basketball court for the twin towns. The court is currently being installed inside the Cayo North Resource and Resilience Center, which is the auditorium inside the compound of the Victor Galvez Stadium in San Ignacio, Cayo. The treasurer of the association, Karim Juan, told Creme News XTV that wooden courts are rare in the country due to the high cost to purchase and maintain.
Luckily, last year, we were able to secure funding through Honorable Anthony Mahler and the Belize Tourism Board, and he was willing to purchase and invest in a wooden basketball court. So that basketball court is presently being assembled at Victor Galvez Stadium in San Ignacio Town. So presently, if I'm not mistaken, we're the fourth venue that would have a wooden court. So there's one at Civic Center, Dangriga has one, and Punta Gorda has one. So we would be the fourth venue in the country to have a wooden court. And for sure, I could say that the biggest challenge is to source funds to purchase a wooden court. And so that's a challenge right now because the previous three that have been built, and there was one at Marion Jones, but that is no longer there at the Mexico Center. So the challenge is to secure funds to build one. And then secondly, the other challenge is to ensure that these facilities, the wooden court, is properly maintained to ensure that it gives us a long court life for the community. The wooden courts vary based on the type of court you're putting, the different grade, the type of wood you're using. The one that we're getting a really good wooden court with the highest grade of lumber, which is maple. And the court up here, the court, including the plastic covering to cover the court when it's not in use, if they're using it for another event, was about $200,000.
Juan explained that wooden courts also prevent injuries and wear and tear on the knees of athletes. He said the area would now be able to host more national and international events and could entice more foreign players to play for the Cayo Western Balas.
Yeah, so firstly, the wooden courts, it minimizes injuries with a fall, but even more importantly for the athletes, given that the wooden court comes with it's not as hard as a cement slab, a cement structure. It also preserves or assists athletes with eliminating knees and ankle injuries during their entire career. So an athlete who plays on a wooden court would have a longer career compared to an athlete who plays only on cement, because the cement court surely adds to the wear and tear of your knees and ankles. So it's a huge asset. And so I am positive it will also attract more athletes. And additionally, for the community, it will allow our community to host more national events, given that we have a facility that is up to par with other facilities where athletes would surely prefer to play on a wooden court in comparison to a cement court. In respects to locally, like the Cayo Western Balas, it is easier to, as strange as it might sound, it is easier to attract international players and Belizean Americans to play with our team if we have a wooden court in comparison to not having a wooden court, because like I said, a lot of our international athletes that come down to play in our basketball tournaments are concerned with their health, and they want to ensure that they minimize injuries, and so they prefer to play on wooden courts in comparison to the cement courts.
In more sporting news, the auditorium at the Victor Galvez Stadium in San Ignacio, Cayo, which is formerly known as the Cayo North Resource and Resilience Center, is scheduled to get bleachers sometime this year. The treasurer of the association, Karim Juan, said the absence of bleachers has prevented the venue from hosting events. This would change the addition of a wooden basketball court. Juan said that the hope is the venue would also be expanded to eventually hold more bleachers.
The challenge with the venue at Victor Galvez Stadium is that it doesn't have any bleachers. As opposed to Sacred Heart College, it has 2 bleachers and the floor space is a little bigger to seat additional chairs for a Western Balas game. And so up at Victor Galvez, we do not have any bleachers at this time.
Will that be coming soon?
Well, we are anticipating that will be our next project. So as we are already trying to seek sponsorship for some bleachers. So the facility, like I mentioned, the floor space is smaller than Sacred Heart College, but we believe that with well-designed bleachers, we would be able to have as much seating room as Sacred Heart College, given that we would design the bleachers with a steeper angle, a steeper rise, and then we are hoping that we could put the bleachers on the entire length of the basketball court. So that will be our next project, and we're anticipating that we would be able to complete that this year. Yeah, so when they were doing the Victor Galvez Stadium, we were hoping that we would have been able to convince them to do it a little bigger to accommodate growth in the community and to also ensure that we have enough space for it to be a functional facility with enough seating room for the amount of fans that would attend a sporting event. Unfortunately, that was not done, but given the facility as it is, like I said, with a well-designed set of bleachers, it should be able to compensate and handle the community, the sporting community that would attend an event. At this moment, even though Victor Galvez is a bit smaller lengthwise, it can be expanded in one direction where the steel columns would not affect the vision of the fans. So there exists a possibility for expansion on the existing infrastructure that is up there.
In other news, as is customary in Belize, Easter weekend means a dry Good Friday as there are prohibitions on the sale of alcoholic beverages on that day. The Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, this week issued a memo to regional commanders reminding them that no liquor is to be sold, exposed for sale, consumed, or delivered on licensed premises at any time during the mandated closure period, which would be on Good Friday from 12 o'clock a.m. to 11:59 p.m. The memo also states that only restaurants that are license holders will be allowed to serve liquor, only if it is sold with a full meal and consumed while eating. Williams also reminded his regional commanders that officers are to carry out inspections on all liquor license premises within their jurisdiction to ensure that all provisions of the Act are adhered to. And last week, Belizean student Javon Smith showcased his research at the annual Undergraduate Research Symposium at Valdosta State University in Georgia, USA. Smith's research is entitled Fingerprint Classification, a Comparative Analysis of Manual and Automated Methods. Smith, who is majoring in computer information systems with a minor in computer science at Valdosta, spoke on his research and the experiencing of showcasing it.
Yes, I'm studying at Valdosta State. I'm a senior student majoring in computer information systems with a minor in computer science. Very nice experience. I'm just sad that I'm graduating this December, so yeah, it's very short but sweet at the same time. Okay, so for that research, that was a part of a class I took last semester, which was biometrics, and for that class we had to do an experiential learning activity. So like it was like a bunch of like different stuff we had to do throughout the semester. So like for the first the first activity that we had to do, we had to like scan all of our fingerprints, and then we had to like manually classify it. So there's different types of fingerprints like whorls, loops, arcs. Then like later in the course we had to like use a machine learning model, which is like AI basically, and then we had to like train that model using a whole bunch of like different fingerprint types. Yeah, like the machine was like pretty accurate, but then it's also good to have that human insight as well, because sometimes like machines can't get it right all the time, so it's always good to have that human insight, so you can always go and look back and say, okay, like the machine made a mistake, and like I can see like clearly that this is the correct type of fingerprint. So also like just I feel like just like combining like automated methods as well as human insight is like the best way to move forward with biometrics.
Smith also shared words of encouragement to other Belizean youth who may want to follow in his footsteps.
I would say basically just like step outside your comfort zone, because originally I've never like thought to like even like present like my research or anything like that. But like my professor, like she reached out to me and said, hey, like this would be a good opportunity. And like I said, like why not? So it's always like go to like put yourself out there, and like you never know who's like watching, and like who like you never know what opportunities can arise from it. So yeah, just like just step outside of your comfort zone.
And immediately after tonight's newscast, XTV will air a special Cross Country 2025 pre-produced preview featuring Mose Hyde and Fitzgerald Joseph. And with that, we have come to the end of our newscast. The repeat can be viewed on the station later tonight at 9 and again Tuesday on midday. Join us again Tuesday for another news broadcast. I am Drea Espinosa. Have a safe and enjoyable Easter weekend.